I'm going to start, though, I'm sort of doing this in reverse. After Alex died, I was already inexpressibly grateful to John Dewey because of what Paul said. I don't know how you did it, but he needed it and you did it. It grew even greater, that gratitude grew even greater when he died. The only comfort that was there was that he had been to the top of the mountain. He did it. And that was because of what John Dewey did for him. So the idea, I wanted to do something for John Dewey. So this isn't my speech. I wanted to do something. And the idea of bringing a totem pole out here from the northwest to the northeast, that idea wouldn't let go of me. And so with Trina's help, we went shopping for the right totem pole. And we found it. It's here. I didn't know at the time, I found out later, that totem poles are mortuary poles. That's how they started. I didn't know that. I thought that was interesting. This totem pole, the one that we chose, was carved by a well-known native artist who had been a fisherman until a stroke took away that living, and he started to be a carver. And he carved this with a pocket knife. It was really important to bring a true piece of art, something that wasn't a reproduction, something that somebody had actually made with their hands. So we found out a little bit about the artist. His name is Gary Rice. Like Tom, he was born in 1939, and he had his 73rd birthday on June 30th, which was the day that Alex died. I don't know what that means, but it seems poetic in Alex, doesn't it? So we made several long and inefficient trips to the shop, because you might notice it has a slant. And we wanted to get that slant fixed because by the time Alex died, he was straight. We couldn't get it fixed. We took many trips, but the last trip we were there, we were looking at it, and I started hearing this man talking to me, and I looked over, and he was a native man with long braids, and he was talking about this totem pole, saying how you can tell it was the real thing. You can tell because of the way the eyes are carved. You can tell because of the claws. There aren't very many fingers, and the eyes don't go down in a slant. They go straight across. So there were things and he was telling me about it. He was saying, see down here, this was made by the Beaver clan. The beavers are builders. And then the next symbol, this is the wolf. And this wolf is about devotion and leadership. This wolf has his tongue out. And what that means is this wolf is in communication with the spirit world. The next totem is a frog. A frog is about communication between the spirit world and our world. It's about a change in seasons. It's about transformation. It's about connection. The next one, he said, is the raven. The raven is the transformer. The raven is a bringer of light. The raven is also the trickster. And the last one is a bear, the ferocious protector, the bear, strength. And when I told him a little bit about Alex and why I was getting this, he looked at me, his eyes got really big, and he said, this pole is all about transformation. That's what it's all about. So this is the totem pole that I hope you'll be able to find some place to keep here with the Alex slant. The other thing we wanted to bring is in there's bits and pieces to the story. When David and I came back to Seattle to see Alex's body when he was brought back from Micronesia, we were looking for things to send with him, and some of it was mud. We brought back some mud to have cremated with him. We brought back some tundra and some tundra cotton. Some of you have those little pouches with tundra cotton in it. That's why you have it. And there was this tiny little gift shop in this little bush town we're in, and they had these things called pocket spirits next to the cash register. And so we were looking for things to send with him that, I don't know, would be comforting. And we found these pocket spirits, these little totems. I know you can't see them from there, but some of you have these. There are about 25 of them, something like that, and they had 7 there, and they were They were the 7 that were relevant. Let me see, I listed them. I'm not going to be able to remember if I don't look at my notes. Oh, well, I'll read them in a minute. So there was the wolf for leadership, the bear for strength, the raven for creativity, the frog for connection, the eagle for insight. What was the last one? There's one I'm missing. Oh, the hummingbird for peace. That was the last one. So we brought those. And then I decided I wanted to give a set to Dewey, and I didn't know how to do it. Well, prior, about 6 months before that, I met this woman, just walked by her shop and went in to talk to her. She helps people make mosaics, and she works a lot, it turns out, with bereaved people because she herself had lost her 2 children and her husband in a plane crash in Seattle. And so I thought, well, that isn't really me, but I really want to make a mosaic for John Dewey to show how much it means to me, how grateful I am. And then those ideas started to slip away, but then at the end of the summer, of course, it was me. So I went back to her, and we integrated. Trina and I worked together, and we used, okay, wait a minute, there's another piece of the story. Do you see these cards? Some of you may have picked them up. This was Alex's art. It's a tree he made in his blessing. The blessing says, "May your troubles be the leaves on this breeze, and may the trunk of this tree be your mind at ease." I thought this was beautiful, and we decided to make a mosaic for John Dewey to leave here and embed these totems in it. So that's what's down there. So that's the other thing. Okay, that's the explanation. And oh, I left a whole handful of these. There's some of the students have them here somewhere. I hope you can find a way to use them because I find them inspirational. Okay, now the hard part. So Alex packed more suffering and healing, more beauty and anguish into his 20 years than most of us do in 70. His life was about struggle. It was about courage and compassion. It was about transformation and inspiration. For many years, I've thought of Alex as having been born tied to a team of wild, magnificent, rearing, pawing, snorting horses, each one bound for its own freedom. One horse represents his emotions, another his intellect, the third his physical abilities, and the fourth his spirit. He was tied to these horses, but he didn't know how to balance on them, so he spent most of his life trampled under their hooves or being dragged along behind. These horses are a great gift, but not until you get out from under the hooves and get the reins in your hands. That's what he achieved with his life. His is a story of fear and courage, pain and transformation, suffering and beauty, and compassion. There's a way that we're all alone. No matter how many friends we have, how big or how close our family is, whether we're married or have children, there's a way that we're alone, in the way that we're born alone and we die alone. We're the only ones in there. Most people don't notice that until they're adults. I think there are a lot of exceptions in this room, actually. But it's a terrifying realization. And it's something that Alex realized before he entered kindergarten. He had an excruciating sensitivity. A lot of people have talked about that. Almost everything was excruciatingly vivid to him. Just not other people's love for him. He felt their pain sharply, but he couldn't feel their love. Those were the challenges and his strengths that he was born with. The power of those horses, the early realization of existential aloneness, and his sensitivity, and worse, his lopsided sensitivity. He also lived with a demanding level of integrity for his first decade or so. He told the truth and he just let the chips fall where they may. But then he got involved with using drugs, and then dealing drugs and stealing anything he could, failing at school, rejecting our efforts to contain and direct him, and by the time he was 14, he was on a diversion for a felony. As his commitment to self-destruction grew, his commitment to integrity fell. And first it was rationalized by the notion that some people didn't deserve to hear the truth, and then with just straight up lies. What we didn't know until later, and this is important, was that at 11 or 12, he or someone took the real scientific finding that says that people who hurt children were probably themselves hurt as children. That's a true finding, but they distorted it so that he came to believe that because he had been hurt as a child, he was doomed to become someone who would hurt children. That is not true. That is an abuse and a misuse of science. That hurts people who have already been abused. If anybody in this room thinks it, stop thinking it now. It's not true, and it's hurtful. So by the time he was 12, he felt completely alone, unloved, misunderstood, and doomed to become someone he despised. In his mind, all that was left was to wait for the time bomb inside him to go off. Given all that, how could he keep feeling and caring, and why shouldn't he run his life into the ground? How could he even consider taking a deep look inside himself? What was there to hope for? Next stop, wilderness and John Dewey. It was the perfect place for him to heal himself, and we both recognized it right away. He started to hope that he could have a decent future. He began the hard work to create the future, slowly coming to understand that the hard work had more to do with facing fears than with learning math. He came alive with the school's stellar academics. He thrived on the physical work that he was required to do, and he found a home for his natural commitment to integrity and to excellence, a place to develop courage and to seek wisdom. But he was still holding out. For anyone, it's terrifying to look into ourselves or to let others do it, especially when we think there's a monster in there. After 17 months, Tom surprised and terrified us all by expelling him at the first senior retreat, telling him to pack his bags. I think he's the last student that Tom expelled. That shocking event gave him the realization that this is his life. That was a key point. Up until that point, I think he thought that it was some sort of random life that he was borrowing or using for a little while. In that moment, the moment he thought that he was out of Dewey and that he'd lost that opportunity, it suddenly became clear to him that the life he had been thinking was possible was actually his own personal life, and it was going to be up to him to make it happen. When he was told that he could try to earn his way back in, he understood that this was his best shot at the future that he had actually been imagining. So after 17 months, and 7 months into a band with us, with most of the students no longer trusting him or willing to invest in him, they were actually wishing us well in the next program we went to. The band was just abandoned. He was without a primary. Ken and Tom were deliberately giving him conflicting advice. Alex became determined to stay, and he clawed his way out of that hole. He got a reprieve 24 hours at a time. Each day was just a little bit more blood under his fingernail. He decided that the possibility of having the life he could now imagine as his was worth the risk of whatever he might find inside himself. So the kid who skidded, sometimes somersaulting, down the sheer 60-foot cliff into a pile of rocks, the kid who held on to the anchor line, as David described, when the skiff was up on an 8-foot wave, he would jump, hanging onto the anchor line so he could feel the 20 feet of air as the skiff dropped, and he didn't. He decided to take the greatest risk of all and march past his fears into himself without looking away. What does Rilke say? I think it goes, our fears are like dragons guarding our most precious treasures. He decided to lose those treasures and tame those dragons. With the desperation of a condemned man with one ray of hope, he gathered all the fearlessness that he previously used to dangle his life over the abyss, and took the risk of the inward journey to save it. He dug into himself with a commitment to change and expose that fear of being doomed. After working his painful way through that fear, he told me that he took back his free will, meaning that he had come to believe that he had choices. He had harnessed those horses and was learning to balance on them. Then he began to grow from a solid foundation. As I've tried to find my way through losing him, I am so grateful to know that his life, although too short, was a success. And that's because of this amazing school that you're attending and the work he did here that changed his life. He fought his hardest battles before he was 20, and he won. He was equipped to handle the challenges that life would undoubtedly provide. He was solid. He could face the truth of himself and his choices and not look away. He had touched the lives of others, lending them the courage to do the work to transform themselves into moral leaders. It is my deep hope that the memory of his struggles and his triumphs will continue to inspire others to do the same. This loss has taught me some important lessons. One, the most important thing we can do in this life is grow into the whole people that we were born to be. That's really hard for most, but without it, our lives are incomplete. Alex learned to hold himself open to life fearlessly. He learned to experience the suffering and the beauty. They come together. He learned that they come together. He learned that he could bear it. In his last email to me, he wrote, "I guess I'm learning slowly that I am who I am and always have been. There are some key differences, but so are there significant similarities. In total, I suffer the same existence, but I live this suffering very differently. There are certain specifics that I don't think even define or stimulate the suffering. It's just there, and it's mine, and there's good in it. Dewey doesn't really give enough space to suffer in the ways I knew would come, and here they have arrived." And then later he goes on to write about the immensity of the beauty he was immersed in. So thing one is grow. Two, the only measuring stick I could find when reviewing the quality of our relationship after his death was whether I helped him grow. Not how often we talked, not whether he was nice to me, not what we did on the home visit. The only thing that mattered was the extent to which I could truly believe that I helped him grow. That other stuff matters only because it gives information about growth, whether it's needed or whether it's been accomplished. So thing two is help others grow. Three, it's all about doing the right thing. You don't know what that is. You don't always know what that is, and self-deception is tricky. But when it's time to die, or when someone else dies, the thing that will help you get through it is knowing that to the best of your ability, you did the right thing. This is the deepest black hole I have ever been asked to incorporate into my life. So I start with the mercies that surround it, like the friends and relatives, students, all of you who have carried me and held me up, carried us all and held us all up. The knowledge that Alex had lived a complete, if short, life. He was happy and optimistic about the future. There was no way for the people who were left behind to blame themselves or to blame each other. He loved people, and he learned to feel love. He could tackle life's problems, and if he started down the wrong road, he could call himself back. He was joyful and having fun right up to when the wave embraced him. And that wave embraced him and picked him up and threw him down and killed him. The coroner says he died almost instantly. There was no time for more fear and suffering at his death. He had said meaningful goodbyes to most people. He had made amends and reconciliations. Nature brings him back to me fairly directly. I've told the story of the bird on the roof of my cabin and the dragonfly that came up when I said the bird wasn't good enough. So he came in the dragonfly. I have a picture of him with a dragonfly on his life jacket, and he's trying to pull the net and protect that dragonfly at the same time. That's my Alex, and that dragonfly is about seeing through the illusions and about impermanence. He seemed to have some unconscious awareness that he would die young. He insisted on completing the crucial conversation with Johnny the night before he died. He and Trina inexplicably talked at length about drowning just the day before. His artwork and his poetry foreshadow it. Seeing it or reading it later, I didn't recognize it at the time, but when I saw it later, it was like seeing a note in a bottle. Today, this day, is the 49th day after his death. A friend of mine, a Buddhist friend, her Zendo, has has his name up on the altar, and today is the big day in Buddhism. It's the day he's eligible to be reborn. So I don't know what all of this means, but it's poetry. It's like Alex's poetry. I got to be his mom for 20 years. 20 years of love and laughter, of exasperation and agony. 20 years. You know, I was looking, these are hibiscus, I think, is that right? So I was looking at these flowers and I thought 20 years of watching this rare flower struggle toward its magnificence. We only got to see the real magnificence for a little while, but we got to see it. And do you wonder if it was worth it? Would I do it again if I knew the outcome in advance? Is the suffering that I experience now worth the beauty and the memories? Without a second's hesitation. Without a second's hesitation. The suffering will deepen me as his suffering deepened him. And that will make more room for growth. That's what he discovered. It makes more room for growth and for beauty, and it will do the same for all of you. He is, again, making the world a more beautiful place, but he's putting it in you. So thing 4 is that there are mercies in our darkest hour, and it is a gift and a responsibility to find them. The 5th thing is in a real and tangible way. It's funny, Ken and I use the same word. The echo of Alex is still with us. Just like the apple you eat becomes part of you, so too do experiences that change your brain. Anyone who has had an experience with Alex has been changed at many levels, certainly the physiological one, because of it. There are big changes or small changes, and that change is part of you. Over time, it will become more of you and less him, but the echo will always be there. My hope is that the echo of Alex will stay in you all, and that you will transmit it to others. He made his life count. I hope that when you falter, when you find yourself stuck, you will let him inspire you. You will make your life count. He had a secret. He thought he was doomed to become a child molester. That's a pretty scary monster to face, guarded by some pretty fierce dragons. But he decided that the possibility of being able to actually live his life fully was worth the risk of looking at whatever was inside him without turning away. He recovered his compassion and he took back his free will. I hope that you will remember this story and bring Alex near when it's time to wrestle your free will away from your secrets. On Alex's last birthday, I sent him a card that read, "When you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life so that when you die, the world will cry and you will rejoice." And he did just that. It was too soon, but he did just that. He was even rejoicing when he died, and I want to give you the picture of that. Trina gave it to me, and it was a gift. He was out on the reef flat, jumping with the waves. They came in, and he jumped so he could get some more air. And he jumped higher and higher, and each time it was, yee-haw, you know Alex, you know what he would have been doing. And he jumped too high, and he was embraced, and the water took him. He did that, and too soon. How did he do it? He decided to take the risk of opening up his tenderness and loving himself and other people. I know that he found it was worth it because he was happy when he died. He was transformed.